Hello traders and welcome to another market update. My name is Nick and we're going to be taking a look at the currency market today, looking for some major ideas, kind of some big structural points as well as trade ideas. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first one we're going to look at from a technical perspective is EURUSD. Now what you can see here is that overall EURUSD on the daily chart continues to sell off, continues to be in an overall bearish market. However, we have seen some interesting stuff recently. If I zoom in just a little bit, you can see that we are bouncing kind of off the bottom of this structural point here. You can see that right here, as well as right here, we are finding buyers jumping into this market and pushing price off the lows. The question will be, as price has failed to kind of continue higher, if we can come back to that level, will this section hold as a buy zone? I think that there's a pretty good chance, as you can see, multiple points of kind of buying strength, right? Especially with something like this pin bar here and the consolidation point that led to an overall bounce over here, right? So that gives us kind of a bullish sentiment here, as a good chance we may see some sort of buying strength in this area, at least on the shorter terms. If you find some sort of confirmation candle like the beautiful one that we had right here on that kind of bullish pin bar, we might see some sort of a bounce on this multiple bottom low. From there, if it does decide to break through, then of course we might want to back out a little bit and look at the longer term context, where we could see price continue to test one of these lower channels. Now there is our upper channel, and if we kind of draw the same thing on the bottom, you can see it's not out of the question that price would dip down to test this trend line structure along the level that it has been respecting for quite some time. Now it's not a perfect one, but this is a very long term chart, and you can see that multiple times we have had price respecting this trend line here along the bottom. Next up, let's take a look at GBPUSD. GBPUSD pulling back this morning or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. You can see price pulling back, but actually finding some sort of buyer strength along this trend line, which I find very, very interesting. We're looking at a 4-hour chart here, and what you can see, price has been jumping off of this structure low here multiple times. And now when price did get stretched far away, you can see, as we usually talk about, when price gets stretched away from a significant structural level, a lot of times it wants to kind of have a retest or pull back. And with some news about Boris Johnson, not sure exactly what it was, but we did have some news regarding Boris Johnson, and we saw a major structural pullback here. But look at that, the technicals did still hold in some respect. As you can see, price pulled back to this level right here. Beautiful little pull back to this structure point. If I make this green, you can see that if price comes into this area, which it did, right, there's a good chance that this level of structural resistance may become support, especially combined with that nice little trend line level there. So with that said, if price does continue to kind of pull back here, we might see multiple retests of this trend line, but I think that this is a strong level for buyers, and it should be interesting to see if buyers can hold this structural level. My bias right here would be to say that we could see some sort of a bounce on GBP pairs, as price is kind of pulling back to very, very structurally sound levels. But we will see what the fundamentals will say to kind of push price one way or another. The next one we're going to take a look at is USDJPY, which continues to respect the range that it's currently been in. Now, if I kind of draw this range here, you can see that our lower area here is bullish down here, and you can see that the upper area up here is a structural level of resistance, right? So price continues to kind of oscillate back and forth on this currency pair, as neither direction is completely, pushing one way super hard, right? So as price finds buyer support down here and seller resistance up here, my bias here is to continue to trade this range as long as it's available. So if price can come up into this area, I'd be looking for some potential shorts. And if price comes down into this area, might find some opportunities to get long, as long as there's some sort of calculated entry with some sort of, candlestick pattern or confirmation that you like, maybe a moving average, Fibonacci retracements, all of that good stuff can come into your resources as a trader. And we might be able to find some opportunities in the high and low range of this structural level here on USDJPY, looking at the 4-hour chart. Brent crude is our next one, guys, which has continued to find a bounce level here. You can see that overall, I think that we're probably going to head back to test kind of this long-term trend line. You can see that price is sold off from that level, and just as we talked about on GBPUSD, a lot of times when price gets far away from a structural level, there's a good chance it wants to kind of retest that zone. So we might see price continue to make a move to the upside here on Brent crude and test at least this trend line level of resistance sometime in the future. Next up is WTI crude, which is also interesting because if I bring it to the daily chart, you can see a very similar structure right? Pretty nice little trend line there. Overall bearish trend line, and price currently already is testing that trend line. Now the question will be, can price break through that level and start some sort of bullish rally, or are we going to fade here on this level? At first, of course, the trend is very, very strong here, so we might see some sort of rejection. However, if we do see the other side of things, if we do see a breakthrough on the bullish side, there might be some opportunities to look to get long in a calculated way and manage your risk appropriately. Next up is gold, which is going to be a super hot topic as per usual. You can see price heading up and kind of closing near the recent structural highs, which are right around the level of 155.14, right? So really, really high movements here on gold. We've seen a lot of momentum to the upside. And what you can see here is that we really didn't even get much of a pullback. We saw some consolidation before a continuation higher on XAU USD. Now I'm still with my thesis here. If price comes back down to test this trend line, it might be a good opportunity to look for some sort of long position if you can find one that makes sense and it has a good kind of risk to reward setup. Just something to consider. I would not personally be buying gold at this level. It might continue higher. However, I find it a little bit too close to chasing right now, as price is very, very overbought in some ways. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't continue, but from my perspective, I'm going to look for some sort of opportunity that gives me a better risk to reward. Next up is New Zealand dollar. I want to look at this chart on the weekly because everything that's going on with the trade war here, all the pressures building there, you can see it makes sense why New Zealand has been trading lower. Now, if you don't know, New Zealand dollar, New Zealand kind of correlates some ways to the Chinese economy because they do a lot of trade with China. Same with Australia, right? So as the China trade war has gone up or kind of escalated, we've seen New Zealand dollar continue to sell off. And what I wanted to point out was that right here, this structural low has recently been broken on the weekly chart. Now, what this signals for bears is that there is kind of not enough buying demand in this area for buyers to hold this structure. So we have seen a continuation lower, and this might still be a bearish thesis here on New Zealand dollar. I know a lot of people think that, it's too low, it can't continue lower, but the fundamentals are there, and we have some signs from the technical side as well that New Zealand dollar has been sold off very, very heavily for a reason, right? There's some sort of fundamental shift, and this level of structure is no longer holding. So it will be interesting to watch that going forward if we can see some sort of, kind of continuation, and if so, how much lower? From a weekly perspective, we are underneath a major structure low, and so if we do come back to that level, if we do start to fade that down movement, we might be able to find some sort of retest entry on the short side if that is something that would fit your trading plan. Finally, we're going to take a look at Aussie dollar on the 4-hour chart. What I wanted to point out about this is that we are in a nice sweet spot kind of for ranging trading. You can see that here's kind of our structure high, and down here, right around here, you can see we have like a structural low area, right? So both of these highs and lows might give us opportunities. If you, again, kind of same concept as USDJPY, if you find some sort of confirmation or trade reason to get involved, you could look to trade this ranging market if that's something that you like to trade. Guys, thanks so much for listening to today's market update. We will catch you next time.